Good evening. I'd like to call to order the 540th meeting of the City of Laurel Planning Commission. Please note that if you wish to be heard at this meeting, to please sign the speaker list provided on the table at the right side of the council chamber. Thank you. Ms. Green, if you would call the roll, please.
Councilman Smalls?
Here.
Mr. Welford?
Here.
Mr. Williford?
Present.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Kish?
Here.
Mrs. Howland? Chairwoman Bettman?
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, approval of the minutes from the May 10, 2016 meeting.
Madam
Everyone
Chair,
received the meeting minutes? Thank you.
I'll
Go
move to
ahead.
approve the minutes.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Okay, Ms. Green, if you would call the roll, please.
Mr. Welford?
Yes.
Mr. Williford?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Abstain.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, amended site and landscape plan, 123 Bowie Road, filed by M&M Management Company, red, white, and blue thrift store.
Good
Bowie.
evening. The applicant, M&M Management Company, is seeking amended site and landscape approval for 123 Bowie Road, which is for the red, white, and blue thrift store. The property is zoned commercial general. They propose to do renovations to the north side of the building where the docking area is located, and some of the proposed modifications include a slightly raised roof by the docking doors, installing a new concrete parking pad, not parking pad, but a loading dock pad for the area. They would like to install new stairs. They also would like to put up a new 8-foot-high chain link fence surrounding the docking areas. The property in the rear is next to the woods, but it's also next to the train tracks, and their hopes, if the fence goes up, it'll eliminate potential people breaking in, receiving merchandise, and so forth. Staff recommends that the City of Laurel Planning Commission approve the amended site and landscape plan application for 123 Bowie Road with the following conditions. The applicant shall obtain appropriate City of Laurel permits prior to conducting any work. A miscellaneous secondary commercial work permit is required, and a separate City of Laurel fence permit is required prior to the installation of the fence.
Thank you. I just had one question. I've just not seen it before. What is a miscellaneous secondary commercial work permit?
For some of the work that they're doing, they're going to be doing some paving, so they have to get a paving permit for that, but they're not doing any work in the right-of-way, so they don't need to get a full-blown right-of-way permit.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions of staff?
Madam Chair, I do have a question or two.
Councilman Smalls.
How much of these modifications, if any, can be viewed from the main street?
From Bowie Road?
Yes.
Probably none, sir.
Probably none.
Because it's very hidden back there.
Okay, I thought so. The other thing is, I just want to touch on receptacles for trash and enclosures. Is that, part of the approval? Certainly not in front of the commission, but is that something that's been discussed with the applicant and they are aware of what the requirements are?
They will be notified of the requirements that all enclosures have to be enclosed 3 sides, and then the fencing also will enclose the recycling and trash area as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? We have one person signed up. Did you just want to speak if we had questions, or did you have a presentation?
No specific presentation, but to answer any other questions.
If you would please state your name and address for the record. Thank you. Mr. Mel Willis?
Good evening. Mel Willis, Kim Engineering, on behalf of the owner, M&M Management Company. To answer your question about the trash enclosures, at the end of the concrete loading dock, but they will have compactors and recycling, and it's totally hidden so that it's not seen from any of the public roadways or anything like that. And as you mentioned before, and the staff had concurred, the improvements are all pretty well tucked away behind the building, so it's not something that's going to be visible from the main roads. And the improvements are going to be a totally fenced-in area for their loading and unloading practices.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, hearing none, thank you. I would like to open the public hearing on this application for the amended site and landscape plan at 123 Bowie Road. I do not have anyone else signed up to speak. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Hearing and seeing none, we will close the public hearing on the application, and I will entertain a motion for final action.
I'd like to move to approve the amended site and landscape plan for 123 Bowie Road, incorporating the technical conditions in the staff report. And I'd also like to include approval on resolution number 16-03-PC.
Madam Chairman, and I second that.
Ms. Green, if you would call the roll, please.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Mr. Walford?
Yes.
Mr. Williford?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, and thank you. Moving on to Agenda Item 7, Plat of Consolidation, Spring Arbor, 7001 Van Dusen Road, filed by Ribera, Van Dusen, LLC.
Greetings to each of the panel. Greetings to the applicant tonight is seeking a plat of consolidation for consolidate two parcels of land into one. In the PowerPoint, you can see the two arrows right there. At the moment, it's two lots. The applicant would like to consolidate into one lot. At the moment, it is an assisted living development. So tonight, the applicant is requesting that we consolidate the two parcels of land into one parcel, which will be entitled Lot 1.
Okay, I just want to clarify for anybody that might be listening and not seeing, it's not currently assisted living, correct? That's
I'm sorry,
that is
it
the
will.
future
Yes,
plan
ma'am.
for that.
Yes.
Is that
It will.
correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I was thinking it was across from the hospital, and I had looked at the wrong place.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and I do recommend that the commission do approve a consolidation for this parcel.
I just have one question.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
It's not necessarily specific to this, but I haven't, to my recollection, I haven't voted on one of these before. I was just curious, when we approve this, assuming we approve it, then it goes to the county or the state, and they actually just slide the portfolios together?
Yes, it goes to the county to be recorded. And one of the recommendations, if you do approve it, the approved plan should be recorded by Prince George's County Land Records.
Okay, and that's just that's just a standard process for that to occur?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else questions for staff? Hearing and seeing none, I do not currently have anyone signed up to speak. I would like to open the public hearing on this application for plat of consolidation for Spring Arbor 7001 Van Dusen Road. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this? Hearing and seeing none, we will close the public hearing on the application, and I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve the plat of consolidation for Spring Arbor, 7001 Van Dusen Road, filed by Ribera, Van Dusen, and also include the action on the resolution number 16-02-PC.
Thank you. Ms. Green, if you would call the roll, please.
Mr. Walford?
Yes.
Mr. Williford?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And thank you. I think that's your first one presenting. Thank you very much. Moving on to Agenda Item 11, City of Laurel Comprehensive Update to Master Plan, Ordinance Number 1873, for recommendation to the Mayor and City Council. This was a 200-page document that we received, including the feedback received from some of the other people. Mr. Brock.
Yes, Madam Chairman. Master Plan Review Committee was appointed by the mayor in July of last year. They met August of last year through April of this year, they held a public hearing and they recommended to you that the plan be recommended to the mayor and city council for adoption. The lion's share of the master plan is data and analysis. I'll go over some of the highlights in the analysis, the growth plan, and the new goals, objectives, and policies. The Laurel Master Plan was updated November 26 and amended to include a water resource element in September 2009, which is roughly 9 years ago. The law required that the master plan be updated every 5 years. It was changed to 6 years, and during the last session, it was changed to 10 years. So we're right on schedule to update the plan. Population. Between 2000 and 2010 census, the city increased from a population of 19,960 to 25,115, a 25% increase. The average numbers of persons per household in the city went from 2.2 to 2.3, a 6.7% increase. And the median family income increased from $58,552 to $73,359, a $14,800 or 25% increase. The unemployment rate raised from 2.6 to 3.5, while Prince George's County increased from 4.1 to 6.1. In housing, in 2000, the total housing units in the city was 9,548, and in 2010, this increased to 10,919. An additional 1,371 units, or a 14.3% increase. Of this, 291 were single-family detached homes, 420 were single-family townhomes, 197 2, 3, and 4plexes, and 603 apartment units. The apartment units was a 22% increase over the previous census. Occupancy. In 2000, the occupancy of the housing units was 8,998. And of this, it was a 94% occupancy rate. In 2010, the occupancy rate with these additional units went to 96%. The city is currently made up of approximately 3,027 acres, or 4.73 square miles, a 308-acre increase since the 2007 master plan update. Residential land use comprises 990 acres, or 33%. Commercial, which includes retail, office, service delivery uses, totals 433, or 14%. Public and institutional land uses, which include activity and passive city parks and open spaces, churches, schools, public and quasi-public uses, total 791 acres, or 26% of the city. MXT, or mixed-use transportation, 87 acres, or 2.9. Industrial, 154 acres, 5%, and vacant land, only 82 acres in the total city, or 2.7%, with a remainder of 490 acres, which is in streets and public rights-of-way. The municipal growth element. Maryland statute requires that a municipal corporation include within its plan future municipal growth areas outside the existing corporate limits and public service and infrastructures needed to accommodate growth. Within the proposed municipal growth area, any burden on service or infrastructures for which the municipal corporation would be responsible for development in the areas near to and outside the proposed municipal growth areas must be considered. Before you is the proposed map. The blue areas are those areas that are proposed to be in phase 1 of annexation. The city contacted Valbridge Property Advisors to analyze the physical impacts of the annexation of certain properties at near the center city's current borders. Valbridge concluded a baseline physical impact analysis of the proposed annexation areas. Each parcel was evaluated according to its current use, assessed value, and other specific characteristics. The conclusion of the analysis, Valbridge concluded that the proposed annexation overall are at a modestly more than break-even point for annexations, which that means is if all of those lands were annexed, the amount of tax that they generate would cover the expenditures of public services. So the committee chose the correct areas. I'd like to move to the goals, objectives, and policies. And these are the new goals, objectives, and policies that were added to the existing. The first is land use. Collaborate with adjacent jurisdictions to ensure coordinated land use patterns, connected transportation networks, and continuous environmental networks, in particular during the preparation of master sector and functional plans. This is most important since we are located between two counties actually 3 counties, that we coordinate planning for transportation. And this is an issue that was brought up with the train station and Laurel Park Station, that there was no coordination on transportation planning. Historic preservation. Undertake a historic structure survey and analysis to document historic significant properties located outside the historic district that warrant consideration for preservation, which reflect elements of cultural, social, economic, political, or architectural history of the city. The purpose of this is to take in historic properties that are currently not within a historic district, and this will enable the HTC to look at those properties and recommend to the mayor and city council those that they would recommend be included in a historic district or preserved. Additionally, continue to provide incentives to encourage preservation and adaptive reuse of historic resources. And this is tax credits that are provided for those in a historic district that improve their property. This is provided by the city. Moving on to housing, encourage affordable and accessible housing opportunities for all residents, including families, the elderly, physically handicapped, and economically disadvantaged was added to that objective. Community facilities. Support the Laurel Arts and Entertainment District as well as future Arts and Entertainment District to foster interactions among artists and artist-related business opportunities. Continue to support local artists and artist organizations and attract new artists through incentives such as live, work, affordable housing, and increase opportunities for artists to participate in the delivery of public services, the planning and design of capital improvements, and in the design and delivery of public information. And this is putting more emphasis on the Arts and Entertainment District, which currently goes from US 1 up Main Street to 4th Street. Water resources. The city will cooperate with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Maryland Department of Environment to remove fallen trees that obstruct the free flow of water in the Potomac River watershed, adjacent to the city municipal boundaries, as well as necessary downstream to limit flood erosion and provide for a healthy river ecosystem, and to continue to fully engage with the Washington Suburban Sanitation Commission to ensure cooperation and planning for water release from the T. Howard Duckett Dam to minimize flood during the storm, provide adequate water supply for citizens, and also to ensure a healthy ecosystem through the watershed. Transportation, support the implementation of transit-oriented development through effective partnership with state agencies, local jurisdictions, and the private sector. Continue to support the development of the Laurel train station, a state-designated TOD, into a mixed-use transit-oriented development to include multifamily residential, retail commercial, professional business offices, and structured parking. Continue to be a strong and vocal advocate for the retention of the existing full marked service level of the Laurel station. Increase transit ridership to support transportation network efficiencies and reducing traffic congestion, and support the use of transportation alternatives, including transit accessibility by bicycles and pedestrians. There are two more maps that I will show you. This is the MXT map. The only change to this map from the prior MXT map is in the top left. It's an antiquated plan unit development that's recommended to be changed to the MXT. And then on the future land use map is the corresponding MXT recommendation. Now what that allows is if the property owner comes in and requests that it be rezoned MXT, which is a separate distinctive zoning category, by having it in the MXT area, then that allows him to rightfully apply for a rezoning to the MXT zoning category. And that concludes the presentation, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brock. Well,
How do you estimate impact?
I think if you can turn your mic on to green. There you go.
Thank you. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
How do you impact base realignment and closing as it pertains to Fort Meade and other adjacent communities? When are we going to have too many apartments and not enough individual homes? What's that ratio? How does it work?
I think that we have reached the peak of the number of apartment units. We have Hawthorne Place, which was approved, I want to say 7-8 years ago. Well, that's revived itself. We got West Side under construction. You've got Anderson's Corner, which is under construction, and you have Town Center Residence under construction. So we about maxed out. Now you do have townhouses in West Side. I think there are 57 single-family townhouses that will be of the same quality as are in the Crescents. They're two-car garage, 3-story. The starting price, as I understand it, is $399. So there's an annexation being requested to have additional townhouses above these. But I believe that we've maxed out on the apartments.
Wasn't there a proposed apartment complex east of one, right across from the town center? Is that still in this?
Hawthorne.
Farther down, that's
The Mark train station,
that's Hawthorne, by the bowling alley, off Marshall.
I think he's talking about the Mark train station.
Oh, I thought there
Not,
was
you're
one.
talking about Hawthorne?
I don't remember the name of it.
Hawthorne
like,
is...
like out of the main entrance to the current planned town center, right across the
Yes.
street from that.
that's the Hawthorne.
That's the Hawthorne. Okay, thank you.
That's coming back.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Mr. Wilson.
So I was on, this was my third master plan committee. So I just wanted to share a couple of insights. Just first of all, Jack and his team just did a fantastic job.
Always.
We had a very engaged community group that Sarah wrangled quite nicely, and I think it was a good group. I think we asked a lot of good questions, and city staff, from the police chief to, this is kind of a grueling process for staff, right? To come in and help Jack's teams write this and deal with it. And you guys saw the state report, and there were some things in there, but compared to what it could have been in the old days, that was an amazing sign of how good this report really was. So I got to really give the kudos to Jack and his team. I think there's some things that jumped out to me, and I'll just give you really quick. One is all this multifamily housing. I think that we had the staff do an analysis of what's in the pipeline.
Right.
If everything builds out, I think the number's around 3,054 units.
Yes, sir.
Apartment buildings in the pipeline. 3,054 units.
You said parking.
In the
You
pipeline.
said parking units, not.
No,
Apartment.
residential
Apartments, yeah.
apartments. These are apartments.
Okay.
So, and there's 68, 70 single families in the pipeline.
Okay.
So when you play those numbers out over the however many years
Okay.
it takes to build them, we're going to see population increase according to the multiple by 7,400 souls, which will take us in the next census over 30,000
Okay.
as a town. So that we're starting to see the change in the town. The other thing that will happen here is we're going from 45% owner occupied to 34% owner occupied, and we're probably on a downslope in terms of owner occupied. So what you're seeing is Laurel moving from a edge suburban area to more of an urban area. I mean, my joke is I'll be gone, but we're going to look like Bethesda fully built out, right? After a couple of more business cycles, at least the core of it. And I think that's a good thing. We got to find a way to pay for services, right? So, but it's not going to be the suburban environment that Mr. Welford and Mr. Kish and Ms. Bateman grew up in, right? It's changing. A couple of other things that I think that are worth noting is when that change from edge suburban to urban happens, the transportation network is vital. And one of the things to think about is today we have reasonable transportation for the business, for the work week. But if you're disabled or you don't have a car in Laurel on the weekends, you are stranded. There is no way to get around. So we're going to all have, and Jack put it in the report, we're going to all have to start thinking about a different style of transportation as this comes in. These young kids don't want cars, right? They want to walk everywhere. They want to be able to get to amenities and, you know, get to what, and we're offering that. That's the reason they're moving here. That's the reason the apartment, the money is coming here. But it's going to require cooperation of the council, the county council, and the state. That affects the transportation network. We've all been through this thing with the station that I think the council and everybody fought off. I think we've got a reasonable thing, but we can't let up our guard on that. Okay. Right to the north of us, I didn't include that in the pipeline. I just talked to the city of Laurel. So when you add in that, decade-long process at the track, I don't know how many people that brings to the road network.
Oh, thousands.
So this is big deal, and this brings us squarely, and it's in the report, to regional planning. Today, planning stops at the county lines. Mr. Smalls has worked this for his whole public career, trying to get a handle on this. I think the council, with a lot of backing from MML and everybody else, is pushing the state to demand regional planning. There's a lot of opposition to that because the counties don't like it. They want to do their own thing. Are we the only city in the county that has planning authority?
I think so.
So, you know, we want to preserve that, but we're going to have to help these folks lobby for, there's no reason in the world that Howard County ought to go off and do planning and transportation maps and all that stuff. Laurel's doing its own thing. Maryland National Parks and Planning is doing its own thing. Montgomery's doing its own thing. And we're going to try to reconcile all that. There has to be a regional planning authority. Maybe they can do it by corridors. There's probably a smart way to do it. But that's going to be huge as you look to the future. The other thing here is public safety and health. That development, all of it, was based on a hospital sitting over yonder.
Yes, what's going to happen there?
So we don't know.
Okay.
But again, we put, Jack and the guys put that in the report, that how important that is, that all of that was based on having an emergency room and all the other things you need. Now, maybe it doesn't need to be that kind of hospital, but we got to have something, and we got to have it so that we can move people around. Today, the fire service runs 90% of the calls are EMS calls. The fire service is fundamentally an EMS service that occasionally does fire suppression. And so I think we're going to have to reimagine EMS. I don't know, maybe we go to a California model where they actually bring a physician's assistant on the call and they provide medical care there for those that can do it. But the EMS model we have today breaks under these pressures. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is is the river. I mean, the river is created Laurel. The river is what is an amenity here, and the ability of preserving that river basin, the cooperation with WSSC, all of the work that Mr. Smalls has led in terms of all the green stuff, LEED certified and water runoff and permeable surfaces, and all that becomes vitally important when you think about what happens if we lose the river. The thing that Mr. Fleming brought up, I don't know, a year and a half ago, Marty, with getting the snags out of the river. That sounds like such an easy thing to do.
No.
But if we don't do that, and we have this continued wacky storms that we're going to have some serious issues. So all these things, I mean, the master plan is where all this stuff kind of comes together. When you read it, it seems like they're stovepipes, and we probably didn't have the opportunity to knit a story together. But I think it's important that we think about these. None of these things, these pressures, are independent. Population's driving this. Money coming in. We got Conterra to the south. We got the track to the north. All of that land west of West Laurel, for my West Laurel friends that are watching on TV, they're coming for you. They know where you guys are. That land is not going to sit empty to the west of us. So all this stuff has to work. And even though this master plan stuff is fairly boring, we had, 2 people show up at the public hearing. But it's going to be important for my grandkids. Probably not for me.
Right.
But it's going to be really important. So we have the ability in this town to manage this future.
Okay.
And it's going to require not just sitting here in our little town and thinking about it from a planning commission's point of view.
Right.
We're really going to be called on, I think, to work this at the state and county level if we're going to sort out how these issues interact. And I know the council's been thinking about this and working on it, and certainly Mr. Smalls has been advocating it. The stuff that the planning group has done and Mr. Fleming has done, and the chief and everything else is going on. I mean, Laurel's got pieces of all this, and I know the mayor's thought about it this way, but that's my sermon, and I'm sticking to it.
Wow.
So I want to thank again the work you guys have done. It was absolutely spectacular, and I know the public doesn't. They take it for granted. If you talk to your neighbors and say, you realize we have zoning authority in this town, they go, what is that? How does that affect me? So, thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Yes.
Any other
Madam
commissioners?
Chair, yeah, if
I
could-
wanted to thank you for that contribution because you seem to have a bigger awareness. Remember, I came here in 1991, and I'm still the junior member who didn't grow up in here, other than Fred.
Me and Fred were both.
And as I look at all the building they're doing over at Fort Meade and what's supposed to be coming up south of us, I was wondering, we're looking down the road as well as across the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smalls.
I just wanted to add a couple of things, sort of dovetail off of what Rick was saying, as well as Mr. Williford. First of all, I want to compliment you, Jack, and staff on the work that you've done. But I also want to compliment you, Rick, on leading the committee. While I didn't attend, I did watch some of the televised meetings that you guys held, and I even recorded some of those numbers, so you're repeating them. I could sit here and nod my head that, yeah, he's right in terms of population. There are a couple of items as I'm still going through, and fortunately I have the advantage along with my colleagues on the council to still have the opportunity to go through and pour over the master plan before it comes to us for public hearings, et cetera. But items like the regional planning, and this goes back several years when Rick was on the city council, when he brought up the regional planning authority and the fact that much of the planning, which is still being done today, in the stovepipe. We're not looking at transportation regionally and those kinds of things. So pulling all of that together and working cooperatively with Prince George's County, Howard County, Anne Arundel County, and even Montgomery County, with that sort of regional approach is key. Transportation. We all know that we have a transit system that calls itself a regional transit authority, but for the service it provides, and there are reasons that there are some limitations to what it provides in terms of service to residents of Laurel. But that has to expand for the city to kind of begin to reach some of the needs of many of our residents who don't have public transportation. And I'll just touch very, very briefly on healthcare. Healthcare is changing, as we all know, across the country. It's not just a Laurel Regional Hospital. It's changing. The Affordable Care Act and other federal legislation is forcing hospitals to change. So I don't think there's a worry. There shouldn't be a worry in this community about health care not being available, emergency health care, et cetera, not being available to residents and businesses in Laurel. That will stay. It'll change from what it is now. It's not going to be the kind of hospitals by volume, that is, how many beds you have filled. It's a more value-based kind of a healthcare system where it's the hospitals are encouraged to do things outside of the walls of the hospital to encourage and promote wellness and good health, to keep people out of hospitals. So that's all changing, and we're a part of that. We're right in the throes of it as a community. So we're going to see some positive things there. I'd just like to ask Jack and Marty, perhaps, if the presentation or portions of the presentation that you gave here this evening, if that could be put into some kind of a PowerPoint presentation, some of the data, particularly to show some charts, diagrams, that sort of thing. So when it's presented to the council, there's some visual things happening, so we can see where you talked about population growth, when you talk about housing growth. If those could maybe be done, not by you hopefully, but by someone you pass it on to do some charting and some diagrams so we could see visually exactly how some of this is changing and the impacts on the city. Because I think what you presented is very valuable and useful information. And if it's in a PowerPoint that maybe could be used in other presentations as we're talking about the master plan and as we're advancing through this process, I think it would be very helpful.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment. I've been on the Planning Commission since 1999. The staff has been outstanding. So I'm challenging the newest members. This is not the minor leagues. Okay? So get ready to do your homework and keep the reputation of the staff intact.
Thank you. I too, before we conclude, and repeating some of what has been said, but I would like to thank Jack and the team, and I would also like to thank the entire master plan review committee. This document, and when I set out, and I'm speaking more to if there are people that are watching us tonight, is a 200-page document. And Rick, you shortchanged yourself when you said you didn't build a story. I do believe there was a story in that document. It's not a difficult read. I mean, you flip back and forth because you're looking at numbers and finding how things go back and forth. But I would encourage people, as I say, when this document is approved and final from the council and the mayor, it will be the guide for this commission going forward. But it's also the guide for any resident of Laurel as to what you can expect of your city officials, of this commission, and regulations and requirements that you will be living by. So I do encourage people to watch that. So again, a big thank you to the work. And it is on the city website now. So if you're found some of the numbers that either Jack or Rick mentioned of interest, go look them up and find out more about them. It was mentioned, but I'd like to say publicly that this plan was sent to many different people for review. It was sent to the state of Maryland. I would like to thank the people at the state of Maryland who also farmed it out within their agencies. They did a very thorough review and sent back very detailed comments. But they also sent back very high compliments of the overall plan. Before they went into kind of some of their editing and things like that, they complimented the plan. So I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that it was reviewed. And again, I don't have all the history of Rick, but I thought that it was well received from them and their input. And then just to conclude that, the comments that were received from the state of Maryland were incorporated and into the plan and updated. That is going forward, should this be approved to the council. Again, I just encourage the public to look at it and see what's in there. If there are no other questions, I do not have anyone signed up for this. However, I would like to open the public hearing on the City of Laurel Comprehensive Update to the Master Plan Ordinance 1873 for recommendation to the Mayor and City Council. Hearing and seeing no one to speak, we will close the public hearing. And if there are no other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion for final action.
I'll move to approve a recommendation to the Mayor and City Council of the Master Plan Ordinance Number 1873, and at the same time recommend for approval Resolution Number 16-04-PC.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Green, the roll, please.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Mr. Walford?
Yes.
Mr. Williford?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you all. Moving on to agenda item 15, the 2015 Planning Commission Annual Report. Ms. Coley?
Good evening. The city each year is required by July 1st to transmit to the Maryland State Department of Planning an annual report approved by the Planning Commission for the previous calendar year. In your package, you received the calendar year 2015 annual report that basically discusses how many residential permits were issued for the year, if there were any zoning code or zoning amendments that were completed, and a status update of the master plan. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the annual report for calendar year 2015 and is transmitted to the State Planning Department.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Hearing none, I'll open the public hearing on the 2015 Planning Commission Annual Report. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and move for final action. Entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve the 2015 Planning Commission Annual Report and to have that also include the resolution number 1606 PC.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Ms. Green, if you would call the roll, please.
Mr. Walford?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yep.
Mr. Williford?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. No other action? The meeting,
I just want to reiterate, you're new, and I understand being new. You need to understand we are volunteers, all right? And we take this thing very seriously, and I've grown to love Laurel, and I am not threatened by what's coming south, east, north, or west. So if you continue up the good work, you'll be proud of yourself. Amen.
amen. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Have a good night.
We're about down below.
Down below.
Where's below?